far, that more than 2 million people have fled Ukraine. Joining us now to break down today's developments is foreign correspondent Alex Salvi. He is on the Polish border with Ukraine. Hi, Alex.
Jen, Mercedes, the day began with President Biden again taking a shot at Russia's finances. Yet another effort by Western allies to force Moscow to the negotiating table and hopefully out of Ukraine in the near future. The United States is raising the economic stakes of Moscow's aggression, banning gas and oil imports into the country.
And the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
Russia is now the most sanctioned country on the planet, surpassing Iran and North Korea for the title. The move could have ramifications for Americans who are already paying an average of $4.17 per gallon, and other countries are following suit. The European Union is formulating a plan to become independent from Russian fossil fuels by the year 2030, and the United Kingdom announcing it'll be phasing out Moscow's energy by the end of the year. But Ukrainian President Zelensky tells the UK Parliament that more can be done, as he continues to urge a greater NATO involvement in the conflict. His calls may be answered soon, with Poland sending Soviet-era fighter jets to Ramstein Air Base in Germany and urging allies to do the same. The decision could be an indicator any military equipment sent to Ukraine will be an all-or-nothing approach on behalf of the NATO alliance. Zelensky's address coming hours after posting a video in his Kyiv office, saying he's ready to continue the fight, and he might just have to. CIA Director Bill Burns says Russian President Putin underestimated the solidarity of Western allies, but warns he has his mind set on taking all of Ukraine, no matter the cost.
And where that leads, I think, is for an ugly next few weeks.
Russia is paying the price militarily, with Ukrainian forces saying a second general was killed in less than a week. But Ukraine is taking heavy losses in the city of Sumy, where officials say 21 civilians, including 2 children, were killed in Russian airstrikes. It's a similar scene in the besieged city of Mariupol, where basic necessities have been cut off for several days now. A humanitarian corridor helps hundreds of people escape the bombardment. As fears grow, it could be halted by a ceasefire violation. The United Nations says 2 million Ukrainians have left the country, marking the fastest growing refugee crisis in decades, just 13 days into Russia's invasion. And just last hour, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby, as you touched on at the beginning of the show, said the decision to transfer Polish planes to Ukraine was Warsaw's decision, saying ultimately the proposal is just too risky, and meaning it'll likely be some time until we see NATO-backed fighter jets in Ukrainian skies, if we see them at all. Jen, Mercedes?
Alex, I mentioned a moment ago, there's 2 million that have fled Ukraine. A large number of them obviously have gone to Poland. I understand that you had the opportunity today to tour a refugee camp there. Tell us what you saw.
It was a heartbreaking scene. I mean, you see people coming over the border. You see grown adults hugging each other with tears in their eyes, acknowledging that, yes, they are back at safety, but there's still a long way to go because they're starting their life over. And border agents here say that the number of refugees does remain consistent as of right now, but with each day, the logistics for workers does get a little bit more fine-tuned. As you said, I was at the border earlier today. It didn't seem as crowded as it was yesterday, but workers there also told me that there's always a lag. Just getting over the border takes about a day. The trip to the border takes at least a day. And of course, making the difficult decision to pack up your bags and leave your country isn't a decision that's made overnight either. So as the reality of the Russian invasion kicks in for people within Ukraine, it's only until a couple days later where you see them arriving at the Polish border.
Well, good for Poland in taking action and accepting these refugees. Alex Salvi in Poland, thank you so much. By all reports, Vladimir Putin was expecting Ukraine to fall quickly, but Ukrainian forces aren't backing down. Foreign correspondent Daniel Cohen joins us live from our New York studio to break down Russia's troop movements.
Good evening, ladies. It's good to be here with you. Low morale, logistical problems on the Russian side, and as we've seen, and that was a great story by Alex Salvi, he packed a lot in. Also, morale issues as we see women and children on the Ukrainian side, even as they're putting up a fight. Okay, let's take a look at the map here. And the red, that is Russian-controlled Putin forces, and if you can look at the arrows, you can see the crown jewel and what Putin really wants, Kyiv, right here, which is the capital. In fact, the Institute for the Study of War says in the next 72 hours, it is expecting expecting Putin to fix some of those logistical problems with the Russian tank convoy 40 miles, we're going to see in just a moment, and make a move on Kyiv. By the way, you heard Zelensky mentioned in Alex's report. He said today to the London Parliament, I'm in my office, not hiding, not afraid of anyone. And as he puffs his chest up, let's take a look at the next map, everybody. From northern, we go to southern Ukraine. Mariupol, Sarah Williamson reporting there are 400,000 people there that want to evacuate, although the evacuation corridors that have been set up, the Red Cross said yesterday, were lined with Russian mines, not sure what to do. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., Russia says there will be a ceasefire so those civilians can evacuate. Most going to Poland. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, and across Ukraine this way. Odessa still controlled by Ukraine. Russia really wants it because there are ships here in the Black Sea. If Putin controls the Black Sea and controls southern Ukraine right here, he controls what goes in and out. Let's take a look at the next slide, everybody, in the next map. This, also something Alex talked about. Big development today, in case you haven't heard yet. Poland saying that it would supply Russian MiG-29s to Ukraine. The plan was to fly those to Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, an American base, and then America would backfill the Polish supply with F-16. Well, John Kirby saying today that there was no substantive rationale for doing that. Now, why would he say that? Germany, a NATO country, an American base. How would Putin react and how would he respond? It would be like NATO getting involved so far in this war. We're going to have to watch carefully to see what happens with those MiGs. One last thing I want to show you, everybody. Here is the convoy. I want to show you exactly where it is. And again, stalled. We're hearing stories about Ukrainians pushing pianos to try to stop heavy equipment from moving and pushing large pieces of furniture in the road. And I just want to show you again the evacuation, the major humanitarian, a crisis that has happened here. A threshold was eclipsed today. Over 2 million now Ukrainians have evacuated from the country, and just showing you loosely here where they've gone. About 100,000 to Russia, Moldova, but again, Poland, 1.2 million. Almost, well, more than half, you can see, of all the Ukrainian refugees to Poland. Watching the situation here, we'll definitely be watching about that ceasefire in the morning. That's kind of where things stand for now. Ladies, I'm going to send it back to you.
Daniel Cohen, thank you so much for the update.
Sure.
Joining us now with some insight into Russia's latest moves is retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, president of the London Center for Policy Research and former National Security Advisor for Trump 2020. Tony, welcome.
Thank you. Good to have joined you guys. Thanks.
Well, today the Defense Department was taken by surprise when Poland made that announcement saying it was giving Ukraine all of its MiG fighter jets, but they would be sent to the American Air Force Base in Germany. Now, in a statement, the Defense Department, they said, quote, the prospect of fighter jets at the disposal of the government of the United States of America departing from a U.S. NATO base in Germany to fly into an airspace that is contested with Russia over Ukraine raises serious concerns for the entire NATO alliance. Do you agree that this is a bad idea, and why?
I often disagree with John Kirby, but he's correct in this case. This is not a good idea for two reasons. First, there's no guarantee, Jen, that once those fighter jets are there, they're usable. There's technical reasons that you don't have interoperability between these countries. It could be a different variant. It could be a different set of instructions. By the time you get them there and get people trained, the war's going to be over. So this is a virtue signal. And to John Kirby's point, you go through all of this with no real tangible net gain. You're putting the entire alliance on the spot to potentially have to face off against Putin. I would argue Putin is just crazy enough to want this to happen. Here we have, he's essentially a Bond villain looking for more and more justification to be more and more aggressive. So there's really no upside to this transaction. Nothing is in it for the Ukrainians. They're not going to get any really enhanced weapons. And we're putting a lot of the alliance at risk.
Well, I mean, but Putin has already pretty much said with the sanctions put in place, it almost is like a declaration of war in his eyes. Over the weekend, I want to get your reaction to this. Sir Chris Deverell, a highly decorated 4-star retired British Army general, said he believes there will ultimately be an armed conflict, tweeting, quote, I have been against the imposition of a no-fly zone by NATO in Ukraine, believing that it would surely escalate the conflict. But Putin seems hell-bent on escalation. So the question is becoming, does NATO fight him now or fight him later? Your thoughts on this? Will Russia eventually force NATO's hand?
Mercy, it's very possible that he will, but we're not ready. Look, I deployed to Germany in 1985, my first deployment as a second lieutenant, to work with a cohesive, well-prepared NATO to stop a Russian aggressor. That took annual training and preparation, and that was going to be a peer-to-peer conflict. The last time NATO did anything was in Afghanistan against an insurgency. So, Mercy, they're not ready. I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm saying that NATO is in no shape to actually confront a peer, and it would be disastrous. So, as he points out, I think it's inevitable if Putin continues aggression. I would argue that there are alternate methods that we can use to slow him down. We just don't have a strong president, Mercy, who's in place and willing to do dirty tricks and be very aggressive. We've got to, if you ever seen the movie Top Gun, Hot Shots, you've got Tug Benson as the president faced off with a Bond villain. And it's just not a good situation.
Tony, what do you think Putin's next move will be? There's, speculation that the communications might be cut off. We're hearing from Zelensky on a regular basis. What do you think he goes after next? What's his next move?
So he's going to continue to constrict, like a boa constrictor, the capital. It's little by little. He's been able to overcome his initial difficulties with getting forces in. I would argue, Jen, that he purposely did not front load a lot of logistics because he thought it was going to be short. And frankly, that's one of the things that threw me off. I thought he would have front loaded sources to do what he's doing. And I think you're going to see them just grind it out. There's 4 political wills at play here. The political will of Zelensky and the Ukrainian government, the political will of Putin and the Russian government, and the people of both countries. The people of Ukraine are going to stand strong, as will Zelensky. Putin is going to stand strong. The question is, will the Russian people continue to support the insanity? Otherwise, Putin is going to continue to grind on down the road.
Hey, Tony, real quick, you mentioned about alternative or alternate methods instead of NATO being ready from a military standpoint. What would those alternate methods be? We have about 25 seconds.
So you've got to examine what Putin values most. I would argue that while we've done some good things to slow him down, we haven't got to the heart of the man. The Chinese are now going to step up and fill that space that we were in, the Europeans were in. And I think you got to make it personal. I'm not saying we should do what Lindsey Graham said to assassinate the man, but I think there's things we can do on the clandestine side to make Putin remember that he's human and that there's going to be a cost to be paid for any aggression. There's things that can be done, Mercy. I don't want to get into a lot of the suggestions I've made already, but it's a matter of our political will, being willing to engage and go and do some of the things we did during the Cold War to warn him off.
Well, and hopefully it's not too little too late. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, thank you so much, as always, for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.